In this lesson, we're going to segue off of age and into weight, because in terms of adding weight to the face, it's actually a very similar process to how we approach the child without any scaling down. We're only adding to the adult face. So while that's fresh in our minds, let's get back to the adult masculine face, turning off the child shape key. And my eyes, we scaled and moved them around. So that's kind of a mistake because I can't get back to the adult eyes. What I'm going to do to fix this is quickly rename this to be child eyes. And then I have another blender open with the end result from the masculine feminine lesson. And I'm going to select that eye object, hit Control C, jump back over to my current scene and Control V. Now this, okay, since the eyes were using the head object in the mirror modifier, that object comes with it. So we will delete that secondary head, move the eye object back to the proper collection, and for the mirror, make sure we select our head. Okay, so now I've got a pair of adult eyes and a pair of child eyes. We can begin sculpting. So I'm going to select my head object, go to object data, add another shape key, and we'll call this lean. We're going to start by going lean, and then we'll add weight. So changing that value up to 1. The key principle here is to decrease the volume while making the skeletal structure stand out more. And frankly, this guy was already pretty lean to start with, though he is a little more on the muscular side, so there is a little more volume than, say, someone who is very skinny and doesn't work out. So making this guy even skinnier is going to be a fairly quick process. I'm going to switch over to my pen. And the first place I like to start is the cheeks. So I'm going to use my inflate brush. The opposite of what we did to the child, we're going to start pushing inward. But it's important to know your skeletal structure in this case, because if we start pushing in around the zygomatic arch, we're actually decreasing skeletal volume, which is not what happens when people lose weight. So it's the space in between the skeleton, right? So the cheeks, for example, there's a lot of play whether you gain weight and they plump out, or you lose weight and they appear to suck inward. So just lightly touching in the cheeks. Also decreasing the volume slightly in the nasolabial fat. That's right here. And I'm not trying to remove the definition from the fat pads. Really quite the opposite. The result should maybe even be more definition. But I'm just trying to diminish the volume. So even slightly on this already lean masculine face, just trimming away some of that volume is going to help make him feel even more lean. Same thing with the inferior orbital fat. Holding Control and just pushing in. Now, as I follow the contour of the eyeball, we'll start to see the infraorbital rim appear a little bit more, and that's going to make him feel more skeletal, more lean. And if you go too far, it starts to feel emaciated. Let's do a before and after, so we can see a little bit of that volume trim, and already his head does feel more skeletal. However, there is a fat pad next to the corner of the mouth, and it's the superior jowl, and I'm going to hold Control and push that volume in. And also a little bit above that, or kind of northwest of that. And that's definitely looking more lean. Perhaps take a little bit of flesh away from the upper lip. Holding Control, pushing in. Same thing on the lower lip. Decreasing volume. And same thing in the temple. If we see more of the zygomatic arch and the temporal ridge, that will also make this person feel more lean, even less body fat. Let's see a before and after. So yeah, you can see that he's much more skeletal at this point. And then in kind of broader terms, the volume of the neck can come down. Where we want to keep the tone of the musculature, we don't want the bulk from someone who looks like they've been working out, which is what our default masculine head kind of looks like. So we'll bring in the volume from the side as well as the front and back, maintaining the definition, losing the bulk. Also in the trapezius, right now they're shaped more like someone working out, so we will diminish their volume. And now if we do a before and after, definitely more lean. And then sometimes as an artistic preference, a longer face can also feel more lean. where this wouldn't happen to this specific guy's face because your skeletal bones are not going to lengthen as a result of losing weight. But just for nudging that effect for artistic license, it can make this guy feel even skinnier. So kind of pull down the jaw, pull in the sides of the head. And there we go. This guy looks much, much leaner, much, much skinnier. And again, this is easier and quicker since we started with an already toned facial structure. Now we're ready to go the opposite direction and add weight. So we will disable the lean shape key, add a new one, and call this weight. Change the value up to 1. And in really every way, we're going to be doing the opposite of what we just did for the lean face. Think back to how we adjusted the child minus the scaling. So we want to plump out those cheeks. I like to start with the cheeks if you can't tell. And with my inflate brush, we will start to bring them out. Okay, so part of the goal here, as weight is added to the face, we're going to lose some definition. We're certainly going to lose the skeletal structure like the defined cheekbones. So by adding the weight into the temple, below the zygomatic arch and smoothing out, remember, we're not trying to remove bone mass, but fill in the space between the structures. And before I can get too far in the cheeks, we need to address the neck, which a lot of this extra weight kind of hangs down and congregates around the front of the neck. And I have another reference image for weightier faces. So we will open CC01L13 and take a look. Note the necks especially, we see very little definition in terms of sternocleidomastoid, jugular notch, Adam's apple. Those things are just not very visible. The extra weight hangs down and covers this anatomy, which again is very similar to the child. However, with the child, we still shrunk the overall volume of the neck, but still removed the muscular definition in favor of wrinkles and rolls. In this case, we're enlarging the volume of the neck and adding the wrinkles and rolls. So we will keep this image open as a guide, and the fill brush is going to be perfect for this task. So I'm just going to start right here in the crease of the neck and generously fill in this space. Okay, this is where the double chin comes into play. Also, we lose jaw definition entirely. So continuing with the fill brush and then switching over to inflate, we will increase the volume, smooth out any skeletal structure. And again, like the child, it's not just plumping outwards, it is pulling these structures down as well. Extra weight, gravity takes a toll, and it starts pulling downward. Similarly, the neutral corners of the mouth I like to bring down in this situation. Also the angle of the nasolabial fold. In fact, where in a lean face we have two specific creases, nasolabial fold and the marionette line, oftentimes when there's more weight in the face, you'll see them kind of converge into one crease. So if we continue plumping up the front of the cheek, smooth out that crease, the end of the nasolabial fold, and then with the crease brush kind of cut down, connecting them into one. Want to be careful not to overdo this. There we go. That starts to look more like our reference. Though I should also say that a rounder face does not necessarily correlate to being overweight. It's quite common to see a round face on a low-fat body. Also, it's fairly common to see a body that holds more fat than its face. Like, for example, this man, there's more definition in the face, similar to what you'd see in a lean face. However, there's clearly weight hanging down in the neck and into the torso. So, as with anything when it comes to human faces, always a variety involved. But for our head, we need to continue down into the neck and continue losing the definition that's there. So with my fill brush, we're going to lose the jugular notch, leave just barely any remnant of it. Also the collarbone, as you can see, almost disappears entirely. So fill brush, inflate brush. Since we've got the structure already, being that we're starting from a lean adult face, it's a matter of filling in the gaps. Still, there's a little too much definition. Also, again, our guy was a little more muscular, So it stands to reason that we could lose volume in some of these muscle structures. So I'm holding control and eliminating these sternal heads, or rather sternal and clavicular head. For being muscles that I reference a lot, I wish the sternocleidomastoid had a shorter name. But what are you going to do? So definitely need to fill in the space in the jugular notch. You see very little definition in the reference. The weight just kind of hangs down and takes over that space. At this point, we can probably start adding some creases. There's a common one that forms below the chin. So holding control on my crease brush, let's cut underneath the chin. You saw me do this with the child as well. Can't really see it on this guy because he's got a beard, but pretty evident on this lady, this lady, this lady, this lady. And then with the inflate brush, we can increase the volume around the wrinkle, add another one, starting to form the double chin. There we go. Now there's a lot more weight under the jaw, although maybe still not enough volume. And then we should probably add a crease at the base of the neck. I still feel like there's a little bit too much structure, muscular definition left over from the lean face. So I'm going to try and smooth that out. As we can see with this lady, there is absolutely no jugular notch detail. And definitely pinch this crease rather tight. And maybe add another kind of superficial crease. You have to be careful with creases when you're using symmetry, because it can look particularly unnatural seeing creases be identical on both sides of the head. You can see it's not that way with the lady in the reference. One thing that's bothering me is the base of the neck kind of extends outward, whereas in the reference it does not. I think this is left over from, again, that kind of more muscular default head that we started with. The sternocleidomastoids spread a little bit horizontally, where with a weighty neck like this, there's not going to be that definition, and therefore not the extra horizontal width. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. And overall, just in the back, we're going to plump up the volume and diminish the definition. So with the fill brush, fill in all of the valleys. And this is going to be very, very smooth. Use the inflate to also plump it up a bit. None of that definition should remain. Let's take a look at the before and after. I'm not a huge fan of the wrinkles, again, being so symmetrical. So I might try and smooth some of them out. For the sake of this lesson and showing you the core concepts of how to add weight to the face, I think you probably get the idea, but if I were dedicating a sculpture to this weighty face, I would begin to introduce asymmetry. And that breaks a few things in terms of workflow. So I'm not going to do that here, but I hope you get the idea. Let's take a look around. In some people, the neck, depending on the amount of weight, can really increase in volume. And so if we just continue to plump it out with the inflate brush, I mean, there's quite a big difference between this face and this one. And the more weight that is gained, you start to lose the higher frequency of wrinkles. So like this one would go away. Let's use the fill brush, increase this into one very large jowl. And our geometry down here isn't quite prepared to handle this. If I want to make it smooth, I'll try and use maybe the scrape brush to get rid of some of these artifacts. But yeah, pulling the volume down and out. And eventually the entire neck sort of disappears into one large crease. I'm not going to go that extreme, but the volume is added to the shoulders, even though it's not muscular volume. So you can start to see that process take over. But I think at this point, you probably get the idea of how to add weight to your character's face. Again, it's the opposite of the lean approach. We want to increase volume of our structures, especially in the lower half of the face and the neck, right? You notice I didn't really touch the forehead, the eyes at all. Those structures could maybe be plumped up a little bit, but really it's in the cheek, the double chin, and the neck that changes the most whenever weight is added. And so that is going to be all for the context of weight in the face. In the next lesson, we'll look at old age.